grows among the fields of barley. You can tell the sun in his jealous sky when we walked in fields of gold. So she took her love for to gaze a while among the fields of barley. In his arms she fell as her hair came down among the fields of gold. Will you stay with me? Will you be my love among the fields of barley? And you can tell the sun in his jealous sky when we walked in fields of gold. I never made promises lightly, and there have been some that I've broken, but I swear in the days still left we'll walk in fields of gold. We'll walk in fields of gold. Some that I've broken, but I swear in the days still left we'll walk in fields of gold. We'll walk in fields of gold. Since those summer days among the fields of barley, see the children run as the sun goes down, as you lie in fields of gold. You remember me when the west wind moves among the fields of barley. You can tell the sun in his jealous sky when we walked in fields of gold. When we walked in fields of gold. When we walked in fields of gold.
Great and Marine set at 103. Write scripture on your heart for when you need it. 'Cause anxiety hates Psalm 23. So just say it to yourself till you believe it. And I'm feeling like I'm needing it right now. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
side. Your word is been true every season of my life. Yes, I believe that still waters run through any valley I could find. I'm letting fear down here in heaven's riverside. Your word has been true every season of my life. I believe, yes I believe.
Oh, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me by still waters till my fears are gone. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of
On behalf of the family, thank you so much to be here to celebrate your friend. Some of you have traveled long distances. How many of you have come from out of state? A lot. Wow. Well, we've come to honor and to celebrate and savor the life and the impact and the influence of this brilliant, loving, selfless, full of boundless energy. Everybody attests to that, right? You're tired just for knowing the man. I mean, oh, wow. He's an extraordinary man, Tex Rhodes. What a life, what a legacy, what a man. Coco, sorry that you had to say farewell to your son. And Lindsay, Jamie, sorry for this season of separation. In a while, we're going to have the privilege to hear from family and colleagues. And then if you notice in the order of service there, later we're going to be able to hear from one another, where you'll have an opportunity to share your respect and your appreciation, your amazement at this guy. Here at Good Shepherd, you might be amused, because this is Tex's home church. You might be amused at one of the things that Tex did for us here. On the weekend, we have 3 services, and our main auditorium is down the hall down there. And so it takes a virtual army to put on a service here at Good Shepherd. I mean, we got musicians, technicians, speakers. I mean, there's quite a few people. And so in the south, in the back, there's a beautiful room called the Green Room. And what Tex and Lindsay would do is Tex would make his famous homemade burritos. Anybody had a Tex burrito? Yeah, and you're all still alive, so that's good. Anyway, it was interesting to watch Tex because he and Lindsay would bring the burritos, and you could just tell there was a lot of joy on his part getting to do it. And as you know, because you know this man, is that Tex was happiest when he was giving himself away. And he had a lot to give. Because Tex understood, there's a quote from Jesus that said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." And as Max, in the original language in the New Testament, it's in Greek, that word blessed actually means happy making. And that's why Tex was so happy, because here's the verse with that translation. It is more happy making to give than to receive. Tex knew that. Tex lived that. I had a chance to visit with Eric, who's the president of the company that Tex has been with for a number of years. And, his cancer battle over the last 5+ years has been really rugged. Most people don't make it 5 years with pancreatic cancer. But even as I was visiting with Eric, and he's going to be up here in a little bit talking to us, just said that super long days, very intense, time to finally go to their hotel rooms. And Tex says, no, I got some work to do. And they're going to be there the next morning at 5 a.m. Just extraordinary, constantly giving himself away. One of our guys on the team who oversaw a lot of the worship team, and when Tex would bring his breakfast burritos, here's what, I spoke to Bruce Wickersheim, here's what he said. Tex was a delight and fascinating to watch because he was always so thrilled to prepare breakfast for our teams. Bruce said Tex was such a joy, had such a joy in serving. And as his cancer was progressing, Tex would be in pain. He even had difficulty walking at times, but his heart was full of joy. Bruce said there was a depth in Tex and a depth in his serving. Bruce concluded what he shared this week with me. Tex served the Lord and people with a heart full of joy in the midst of suffering. So thanks again for being here this morning to honor, to celebrate, to savor this really exceptional man. Let me pray for us, and then we'll continue. Father, thank you for capturing Tex's heart with your deep and profound affection for him through your Son, the Lord Jesus. You, Father, see us in all our brokenness and confusion, and you pursue us, offering joy and peace to replace our private moments of pain. Thank you for gifting us with a man named Tex Rhodes. We love and respect this man, and our lives are richer for knowing him and being known by him and being loved and served by him. You know how much we need you to embrace and care for our hearts in the midst of this agonizing season of loss and separation. Father, permeate these moments today with your presence. We pray this in the noble name of the Son, your Son, the Lord Jesus. Amen.
Jonathan Darrin Rhodes, though most people simply knew him as Tex. In fact, I bet some people here just found out today his first name is Jonathan. He's gone by Tex his whole life, just about. This man's life was marked with adventure, hard work, deep loyalty, and love for the people around him. He was born in 1959 in McAllen, Texas, to Doug and Caroline Rhodes, beginning a life that would take him all over the world. And as the son of an Air Force family, moving was simply part of life. From Texas to Alabama, from Florida to Oregon, from California to Japan and the Philippines, home was constantly changing. As a child, those moves shaped him deeply. Tex built strong friendships and meaningful connections, and saying goodbye was never easy for him. But those experiences helped shape the thoughtful, loyal, and grounded man so many of us came to know. Even with all the moving, Oregon always remained home in his heart. His mother Carol grew up in Sweet Home, Oregon, and his father Douglas in Lebanon. Those roots mattered to him deeply. Some of his happiest memories came from his time spent in Lebanon with his grandparents. His grandmother would work in the garden, and her grandfather would work in the garden while his grandmother cooked from it. And that's where Tex's lifelong love for gardening and food began. He carried those traditions with him through his life, along with treasured family recipes for sweet pickles, berry jam, blueberry pie, and so many other meals. After graduating high school in San Antonio, Texas, Tex returned to the state that had always felt like home, and he enrolled at Oregon State University in 1978, majoring in forestry science. When he rolled up to ATO Fraternity House in a 1950 Chevy pickup truck wearing a cowboy hat, his fraternity brothers immediately started calling him Tex, a nickname that stuck with him the rest of his life. After 3 years, realizing forestry industry had declined significantly, he pivoted to civil engineering and graduated in 1985. That willingness to adapt and keep moving forward became a defining trait throughout his life. Tex began his engineering career with CRS Engineers in Portland. One of his early projects brought him to Boise Cascade in Vancouver, Washington, where he later accepted a position and began building what would become an extraordinary career in the pulp and paper industry. But while Tex was building his career, he was also building a life and a family. In 1983, he met Ellen Clemmer at Oregon State. They were married from 87 to 96 and shared years of projects, gardens, and adventure. Shortly after buying their first home together, Ellen came home from work one day to find Tex standing inside a giant hole that he had cut out of the roof. Smiling proudly, he began a year-long project transforming the attic into a beautiful master bedroom. A picture of that is in the foyer. That was Tex, though. He was always building, always creating, always envisioning of what something could be, not just what it was. Tex grew enormous gardens, and Ellen worked hard to keep up by cooking meals from everything he grew. Together, they hiked and backpacked hundreds of miles through Oregon, Washington, California, exploring the beauty of the outdoors that Tex loved so much. Then in 1993, their daughter, Lindsay Donnelly Rhodes, was born. And from that moment on, everything changed. Lindsay became the center of Tex's world. Nothing else in his life outshined being her dad. Whether through work or his projects, his cooking, or his gardening, so much of what he did came from the desire to build a good life for her and the people he loved. Later in life, Tex became a stepdad to Kylie after marrying Jill. While their time together was short, he enjoyed being a dad of 2. And as Jamie, his sister, would say, he should have had 10 kids because he was such a great father. Professionally, Tex built a remarkable career spanning more than 4 decades. He became known throughout the pulp and paper industry as an engineer, leader, mentor, and problem solver. He worked on some of the most difficult and complex industrial projects across North America and internationally, helping build, rebuild, move, and modernize mills that still stand today. His career took him from engineering to manager to director of engineering at Precision Industrial Contractors, where he spent his final professional years. Those who worked alongside him respected not only his knowledge and technical skills, but his integrity, his leadership, and the determination to do things the right way, the Tex way. Tex had the rare ability to look at enormous, complicated problems and calmly figure out how to solve them. Whether it was rebuilding a massive paper machine, designing systems, leading teams, or mentoring younger engineers, he earned the trust and respect of everyone around him. But what mattered most about Tex was never just what he built professionally. It was the life that he built personally. He was a man who could grow a garden from scratch, cook a meal that made people feel at home, renovate a house with his hands, hike through mountains for miles, and still show up fully for the people he loved. He carried with him pieces of every place that he lived: Texas, Oregon, Japan, Philippines, California, yet somehow remained deeply rooted in who he was. Tex leaves behind a legacy of hard work, resilience, intelligence, humor, craftsmanship, generosity, and love. His impact lives on not only in the mills and projects that he helped create, but in the family and friends he nurtured throughout his life. And while we grieve the loss of him today, we also celebrate a life that was truly full. He will be deeply missed, lovingly remembered, and never forgotten. Come on up, Jamie.
So I'm just kind of sharing some stories. I am Jamie, Tex's sister, and I might refer to him as Darrin, because that's what we called him. Even though his name was Jonathan Darrin, he grew up with the name Darrin. And as you said, it wasn't until college that Tex took over. We had a pretty amazing childhood. You could call it a Leave It to Beaver childhood. We lived in a very loving home, and my father was a pilot in the Air Force. We traveled a lot when we were young. It was all good memories. So here's one story. When he was 8 years old, let's see, this is preface this. When he was 8 years old, we moved to Japan, where we spent over a year. And then my dad's squadron was transferred to the Philippines. But during that time, he and I learned to speak Japanese pretty well, and we loved it. And it was a pretty easy language to learn. Not right, but to say the words. If we had stayed longer, we both felt that we would have been fluent in Japanese. And then we moved to the Philippines, where my brother's love for old coins began. He and his friends would dig in the dirt around our school and other places. They would be searching for treasures and all kinds of stuff. They found old coins, bullet shells, and even a dead hand grenade once. Fortunately, our school had educated us about the dangers of the remnants of World War II, and items from that were still scattered around. They knew that kids were naturally curious, and they were constantly. He was always trying to find his next coin, and he had a lot of fun with that. He still has that collection. In fact, a week before he passed, we went and picked up his collection in the safety deposit box, and so Lindsay has that now. And I think my father started a stamp collection and had a little bit of a coin collection, so he got to extend that. Let's see. One of my early memories of my brother was he loved to share his lollipop and ice cream with our dogs. I always thought it was gross, but it made him happy and the dogs were happy. Another story, I was sitting in the bathroom watching my mom put on her makeup and doing her hair. She and my dad were going out for the evening. They had a formal function that night, and they often had things like this to go to. This was the first year that we had moved to the Philippines from Japan. As I was watching my mom do her hair and her makeup, my brother comes in with a stick and a very long snake wrapped around this stick, and it had a big frog in its mouth. And he's all sweaty and dirty like little boys get, and he was so proud. And he's like, Mom, look. She turned around and let out a scream like you've never heard before. People came from down the street because they thought something terrible had happened. And of course, he had to take that snake outside. But he was a happy kid. In our travels, our moves were easy for me. I'm maybe an extrovert and him not. He struggled with that. This is usually every 2 or 3 years. Darrin would take a while to make friends, but then he would hold on to them and keep them. And then I'd be like, next. If Facebook had been around then, he would have 1 million friends on his Facebook page, even though he didn't do Facebook much. Another story about my brother, we moved to San Antonio, Texas, our senior year of high school, which would be rough for anybody, but we got kind of used to it. It turns out it was good for us. We had lived in Illinois before that. Let's see, where is it? I had a car, and normally I took my car to school, but that one particular day I didn't, and we were both on the bus together. And for whatever reason, I was being picked on by some boys on the bus, and my brother was sitting between us. He got up and walked over to the main bully guy, I don't know why I wrote it that way, and picked him up by his shirt. And I remember it so clearly because he grabbed him and he held him up to where he was almost dangling, and he said, "Don't ever talk to my sister that way again, or any other girl on this bus, or I will come and get you." And he put him down, and he went and sat back down, and he opened his book and started reading. You know, he was always reading. You know, he was a lifelong learner from the very beginning of his life to the very end. I was so proud to be a sister. That to me was telling you who the man he was. Sorry. It was really cool to have a big brother. Sorry. The next year, he decided to move to Oregon State. That is where most of our family was. That's where he fell in love and started his career. He started gardening like our grandfather did. I was always jealous of his rich black soil that he had in his garden. I live in Arizona, and my soil never looks black unless I pay a lot of money for it. His love for gardening, cooking, canning, pickling kept many people very happy. He cooked for other people all the time, and he loved to give it away as gifts. For me, cooking is love also, so I understood that. If you're lucky, you got to try some of his triple berry jam or his chili or his burritos or pickles, whatever it was. Some of you may know that Darrin's choices of watching TV was usually either a cooking show or it was college basketball, and he explained to me why college basketball was so much better than professional basketball. And let's see, that was it, cooking shows and basketball. Yeah, he was pretty much a genius when he came to math also, engineering, woodworking, and so many things in the world. The last week of his life, I was the one putting up the towel racks and things in his new bathroom for him. When I was drilling the holes in the walls and putting the mollies in, he starts yelling, "Stop, stop." He goes, "You've got the wrong drill bit." I said, it's okay. I said, "It fits." He goes, "No, I can hear it." He's sitting in the other room 15 feet away, and he could hear that the drill bit that I'm using is the wrong drill bit. And I'm like, okay. So I went out and I got the right drill bit. I came back and I finished drilling, and he goes, "Don't take it too deep." I said, "I'm not. It's flush to the wall." He goes, "Okay, I'll check it." You know. So we both laughed about that. So another quick story. A few months ago, I had surgery, and I needed some help, and he wanted to come to Oregon and take care of me. You know, and he was starting to have some issues with, you know, his pancreatic cancer, but he was still strong enough to, and had the desire. And if you know him, his will and desire will overpower everything. So he came and he cooked every day, and he made bone broth, and I said, you know, I can only drink liquids for a couple days. He says, "That's okay." He goes, "You'll drink the liquids, I'll eat the solids." I said, okay. One of the things that I liked about my brother, loved about him, was that he was so kind to our mother. The way he talked to her on the phone was like the way every man should talk to his mom or his wife. So after our father passed, I spent every weekend with my mom out in Sun City, Arizona, and he would always call and chit-chat, and they would have on speakerphone, and I would hear these conversations, and I'm like, he is so kind and so nice and so thoughtful and so uplifting to her, and that just made me so proud. And I thought, if he wasn't my brother, I would marry him. You know, it's like, what an awesome man he was. Let's see. Okay, so these are maybe out of order a little bit, but one short story, and this tells you about his work ethic, and many of you know that because many of you worked with him. When we were in, my dad got stationed into Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii. And so I went there to go to college. So I was living at home and going to school there, and every summer he would come and stay with us. And he got a job at the Dole pineapple plant. And he came home one day and he said, "Oh my God," he goes, "I got in so much trouble today." I said, "What happened?" He goes, "Well, it wasn't from the boss." I said, "Who?" He goes, "3 guys pushed me into a corner and they shoved me on a wall and they said, 'Stop working so hard. You're going to make us look bad. You're going to go back and they're going to be so mad at us.'" And so I said, "So what are you doing?" He goes, "I'm not slowing down." He goes, "I'm not going to do it." So that just tells you a little bit about his work ethic. Let's see, what else? So as I was talking about when I had my surgery a few months ago, that week that he was with me, he had one bad day, and he and I talked about it, and he said, he goes, I'm okay, I'm at peace. He goes, I love God. He goes, I know that there's better places beyond. And he said, just so you know, I don't have much time left. And I remember it being really a hard moment for both of us. But he was not afraid. And he knew that Lindsay was taken care of because of Ryan. And he knew that I was taking good care of Mom. So he was an awesome person, man, brother, everything. You guys all know him. You know what kind of man he was. And I guess I'm done. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Lindsay, Texas' daughter. I didn't think I would cry this soon, but here I am. Thank you all for coming today. It's nice seeing a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces or faces to names I've heard over the years. Like I said, I'm Lindsay, and I was an only child and his only daughter. And I was the epitome of like an only child daddy's girl. I wasn't the spoiled kind like you would think. I didn't get everything I wanted, but I sure did get everything that I needed. And that was a present, loving, respectful, hardworking dad. He taught me many life lessons, like be kind to your friends, work hard. If you tried your best, then that's enough. Never walk away from an oven on broil. And most importantly, to trust Jesus even when it's hard. He taught me how to love and play basketball, even though I wasn't strong enough or determined enough to be a big post. I still tried out every year because it was something that we bonded over. He was even the coach of my 8th grade team, and he was at every game I think I ever had. I don't ever remember him missing one. We would bond over March Madness and always root for the underdog team. On April 6th, just days before his passing, myself, my dad, and Rhett, my 4-year-old son, we were watching the NCAA championship game, and Rhett said, I want to play that. And the smile on my dad's face was a moment I'll never forget, just seeing that his grandson wants to play basketball. I know my dad made lots of friends on the Dixon basketball court at Oregon State. He talked about it often, and it was a fond memory of his. And it's probably the reason why he had to get 2 knee replacement surgeries. My dad was a person I could rely on and share my big, hard feelings with. In early high school, when my not-so-great friends at the time told me they didn't want to be my friend anymore, I cried to him in the church parking lot. I don't remember his exact words, but I remember being comforted and knowing that everything was going to be okay. He was always a safe place and responded with wisdom and compassion. Later in high school, his walk with the Lord started here at Good Shepherd when he came to see Dave Ramsey. He liked the church and came back the following Sunday, and he had attended ever since. I grew up going to church with my mom and church camps in the summers with my cousins, but it was because of him coming here that got me back to going to church, and my lifelong relationship with Jesus began. Here at Good Shepherd, as Alan said, he was known as the burrito man, and he would spend all weekends cooking those burritos for the worship team on Sundays. My dad was such a good cook and canner. His sweet pickles were a trademark of his, and getting a jar was coveted. And my dad was the one who taught me how to cook too. When I was at his house on the weekends, we would cook stir fry, banana bread, and pork chops, and attend many cooking classes over the years. If you were ever on the receiving end of my dad's habanog ice cream, yes, that's eggnog ice cream with habaneros in it, you knew he loved creating special dishes and sharing them with people. Raise your hand if you ever have had any meal, jam, pickle, burrito, anything from my dad. Yeah, he truly loved that. I think it was his love language. In the summers he spent his time in the garden, he was known for having a green thumb inside and outside of the house. Inside his house was filled with plants. Outside, he grew everything you can imagine: corn, artichokes, peppers, eggplants, and 40. Yes, that's 40 plus tomato plants, which is why we have tomato plants around the room. And the bags have been put under them so you guys can take one home and plant them in your garden and think of him when they grow tomatoes. He would can these tomatoes and make tomato sauce for later. Our multiple freezers are currently stuffed with later tomato stuff. Tomato sauce, lasagna, so much lasagna. What else? Just anything you can imagine with tomatoes. Yeah, so much lasagna. In 2020, when he got his terminal cancer diagnosis, I was 10 weeks pregnant with our son, Rhett. I remember crying together on the phone, not knowing what the future would hold or how much time we had. This is when I saw my dad become the true fighter that he was. Most people don't make it past 1 year with a diagnosis like that, but he made it 6. Throughout his 6 years of battling pancreatic cancer, he endured 98 rounds of chemotherapy and rarely complained. In the beginning, his body responded well, and he and his doctor were able to tailor the chemicals to minimize side effects. On weekends, he would carry his chemo on a little pump in a fanny pack, but he never let that stop him from planting his 40 tomato plants, building a crib for his granddaughter, mowing his 5-acre lawn, making pickles, or showing up for extensive work projects. He worked until the very end. He loved what he did and the people he worked with, so many of which are you here today. He always had schematics up on his computer that were so complex, but he knew exactly what he was looking at. That's one of the coolest things about my dad. He knew how to do literally everything and anything and everything. He truly was the smartest person I knew. I remember coming home from college and working on organic chemistry homework, and anyone who knows how hard of a class that is knows that it's exhausting and difficult. But there he was, helping me learn all about carbon bonds. In middle school, he would come to my mom's house to help me with pre-algebra homework because somehow the good at math gene didn't get passed down to me. The end of his cancer journey was brutal and painful for him to endure and for us to see. Yet he never lost faith and never gave up hope that God had a plan for him. Because he was a believer, I know that he is looking down on us from heaven, no longer in pain or suffering. The final hours at the hospital, myself, my husband Ryan, my mom, and my Aunt Jamie were at his bedside. We prayed over him, played K-Love, which was his favorite radio station, told stories, and Ryan read Psalm 23 over him. It's a verse that hits a little differently when you're sitting next to someone as they're about to pass. And I've asked Ryan to read it for us.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
My dad was a son, a brother, uncle, father, and grandfather to our two littles, Rhett and Reagan. I'm sure you guys will see Rhett running around. He was a colleague, coworker, and mentor, and everywhere he went, he left an example of what it looks like to be kind, selfless, and hardworking. His legacy will not be forgotten, and he will be missed. Thank you for coming. Eric's gonna come up now.
Wow, that was really moving. I told myself I wasn't going to cry, but here we are, so. We're here to honor a man that meant a lot to us. Jonathan Rhodes, or better known as Tex. And I know it's a sad day, but I'm here to help celebrate his life and what he did for all of us. So I'm Eric Simonson, and technically I was Tex's boss, but if you knew Tex, you couldn't be his boss. He had such a big personality. And the one thing that was always true is that Tex was always right, which made it difficult to be his boss. Because you might have heard a little bit, Tex was a troublemaker, and he liked to cause trouble. But he was always right, so you couldn't get mad at him. We had a lot of fun together. Tex and I traveled all over the country, did many projects, worked long hours, and he always kept going. And it was just an amazing time that I got to spend with him. As you know, Tex worked in the paper industry. But I started thinking, I bet a lot of people here don't know, and I thought there's probably two types of people here, ones that know how influential Tex was and ones that don't. Tex is known worldwide. Everybody knew Tex. In his 45 years, he touched thousands and thousands of people. From everything from the guy working on the floor, to engineers, to people in operations, to the executive team, they all knew Tex. And the thing that really gets to me is they all remember him. Still, I say still, but ongoing, there's no place in the U.S. in a paper mill that you can go that people don't know Tex Rhodes. And they always tell me, oh yeah, Tex worked with us back in '98 and he helped us with this and he helped fix this. And it's just amazing. And I thought, you know, this didn't happen by accident. It happened because Tex liked to help people. And Tex was so good at that without being asked. He would quietly hear what's going on, hear a problem, hear people talking. And he would help people. He would call them up after he left the mill, say, hey, why don't you do this? And he was the best at then saying, I know a person that can help you with this, and he would call that person, he would get them together, and he would fix their problems. Not out of self-recognition, not out of, just from the joy of problem solving, and that's the man Tex was. It was really amazing to see. And even recently we were at a conference and people I had never met before, never seen before, had heard about Tex passing. And they all came up to say hi and share a story with Tex, which is just so moving, and it proves what kind of man he was and the impact he had on an industry, which was truly amazing, and he'll never be forgotten in the paper industry. It's just part of who he was, and it's part of the paper industry, which he just lived and breathed his whole life. for us at PIC, we never replaced Tex. He was our problem solver, the guy we went to, the guy that had the answers, the guy that knew who you needed to call if you had a problem. And for me, he was that person for me. Anytime something came up, I called Tex. Tex, what are we going to do here? And he had an answer. He had a solution. We'll call this guy. There's this piece of equipment that does that. We can't replace him. And he's left a big hole in all of us. And I want us to just remember to celebrate what he did and take a little bit of that with us as we move forward and remember how he did it. I look at that smile up there, and if you knew Tex, you knew he was stubborn. And I mean that in like the best possible way. We love that about Tex. He was stubborn. If he knew he was right, you could not change his mind. Didn't matter. He was right, you were wrong. And I brought this picture of Tex at work because I love it, and it hangs in our office today, has for years. Because he had that childish grin, and that's the grin he would give me, almost comical, laughing, when he knew I was wrong. And he would just look at me with that grin, and I'd say, okay, Tex, you're right, we're gonna do it this way. I love that about Tex. He was a little kid that way, and he enjoyed what he did, and he was happy doing it. And he was really happy being right. We talked a little bit, I heard a little bit about Tex's work ethic, and you might not all know how hard Tex worked. Me working with him every day for the last 10 years. He never stopped. He was the first person on the job. He was the last person to leave. He worked every weekend. His computer was always on. He would come in the office on the weekends. He would travel wherever you wanted him to travel. And that didn't stop when he was diagnosed. Last year, 4 or 5 years into his chemo treatments, we had a big project in Maine. And I said to Tex, Tex, you don't have to go. Why don't you just stay home? And he looked at me with that grin, and he said, Eric, this is my last big project. I would never miss this. And he came to work for months, for 12-hour days, never with a day off, never complained, and he was happy. He was truly happy. That's the kind of man he was. He really loved what he did. I'm going to share another story about Tex's work ethic. Another project we were on in Port Angeles. Similar project where we were working ungodly hours, 7 days a week. And we were showing up at 5 in the morning, and we really didn't get out of there till 7 or 8 at night, every single night. And one night we had to stay late. We were finishing some projects. We had to show up the next morning at 5 a.m. And it's 10 o'clock at night. And out of the job trailer, we're all leaving, and here comes Tex. And he's walking out of the job trailer with a computer monitor under his arm. And I just looked at him and said, Tex, what are you doing? Well, I'm going to take this home and do some work tonight. I was like, Tex, it's 10 o'clock. We're going to be here at 5. Leave the monitor. And he just looked at me with that grin and carried the monitor to his truck. That's the kind of guy Tex was. He loved it. There's a few more stories I want to share about Tex. Those of us that work with him knew Tex, and we knew him for his boots. Tex wore these big Red Wing steel-toed boots, and he never took them off. And I mean, he never took them off. Tex and I flew to Finland together. 12-hour flight across the Atlantic. And he wore those darn boots. I said, Tex, man, that's a long flight. No, that's good. And he came off the plane with those boots. And then when Tex got diagnosed, Tex and I were in Maryland together on a project. And he told me, he said, yeah, I just was told it was cancer, and they got to run some tests, and we'll figure out what it is. And I said, okay, Tex, you should go home. And he said, no, I'm going to stay for another month. I said, Tex, you're not staying, you're going home. No, it's fine. They can't get me in for another month anyway, and I'll just stay here and work. And one time he listened to me. I said, you're going home tomorrow. And he went home. And I flew back, and I talked to him about what was going on, and, the diagnosis wasn't good. And I said, Tex, what do you want to do? And he said, I'd really like to go on a road trip. And so it just happened, my wife, Lindsay, not to be confused with his Lindsay, and I were taking a road trip in the motorhome to Yuma, Arizona. And I said, Tex, why don't you come with us? And he thought about it, and first he said no, and then he said, okay, I'll go. And so we took him on this trip to Yuma, and we went to Zion, we went to the Grand Canyon, and Tex lived in our motorhome. But he wore those darn boots. He was in the back bedroom. When he came out at 6 o'clock in the morning, those boots were on. And when he went to bed at 10 o'clock at night, those boots were on. And so we were in Zion together, and we were walking through the town, and there was a little gift shop. And Tex, he saw a pair of Birkenstocks. And he looked at them, and he set them down. Then he walked away, and he came back, and he looked at them. And I was watching him, and then we walked away. I said, Tex, you like those Birkenstocks? He said, yeah. I said, well, why don't you buy them? Oh, no. I said, go buy the Birkenstocks, Tex. So we went back to the store, and he bought the Birkenstocks. And so that next morning, Lindsay and I were up making coffee, and Tex comes out of the bedroom with shorts on and Birkenstocks. And I thought, oh my God, we made a change. We got him out of those boots. And he wore those Birkenstocks the rest of the weekend. And we were so happy for Tex. And he wore shorts. And he let his hair down a little bit. And that was one of the biggest joys of me, getting Tex out of his comfort zone and those darn boots. And we asked Lindsay to find them because we want those boots in our office. Put them up for people to remember Tex by. So Tex's diagnosis was for 4 to 6 months, and he lived for 6 years. And he never stopped working. And that wasn't because I didn't try to get him to stop working. It was because he wouldn't. He had chemos on Friday, and Mondays and Tuesday were really hard for Tex. And I would tell him, I'd say, Tex, why don't you just take Monday, Tuesday off? Oh, maybe I'll do that, he said. And then I'd look, and he booked a flight for Monday to go somewhere, and he was flying out. And he was truly sick, but he wouldn't let that stop him. And through the course of that, he told me, he said, Eric, if I stop, I'm going to die, and I don't want to stop. So I told him, Tex, you just do whatever you want to do. We're here for you. Work as much as you want. And he always kept working. He just wouldn't stop. To the point that he would never give up. Even in his last couple weeks, I was talking to Tex, and I knew it was getting worse. And he started telling me about building the cabinets in his new place. And he was so excited. I got a wood shop bid. I'm going to build the cabinets. And I said, Tex, why don't you just pay somebody to put the cabinets in? What are you doing? Right? And he looked at me with that grin, and he said, well, what would be the fun in that? He was happy. He had something to challenge him and do. even in that same time frame with 2 weeks ago, he had booked a trip to go to Virginia to go look at a project with us. I just couldn't believe the character that he had and the work ethic and how much he loved it. And from that, he made the biggest impact of anybody I've ever met. So I thought, how do we honor a man like Tex Rhodes? We do it by carrying on his legacy. We remember what he did, and we use it in our own lives. I want you to leave here with one thing. Impact doesn't come from one big thing. It comes from many small gestures. And Tex was a master at that. He touched all of us through little things like a jar of pickles, or his burritos, or his habanero ice cream, which was the best. But those gestures add up throughout your life. And that's the impact that Tex Rhodes had on all of us. Not just here, but all over the world, all over the paper industry. His small gestures added up into something that is massive. So let's all remember for Tex that we can always figure a way to get things done. Let's remember to help people. Let's remember to be a little stubborn when we're right. Let's remember that he did it all for us so we could be better. That's the legacy of Tex Rhodes I'd like to pass on. So, thank you. Thank you, guys.
He was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he'd never been before. He left yesterday behind him. You might say he was born again. You might say he found the key for every door. When he first came to the mountains, his life was far away. On the road, hanging by a song. But the string's already broken, and he doesn't really care. It keeps changing fast, and it don't last for long. If the Colorado Rocky Mountain High, I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. The shadow from the starlight is softer than a lullaby. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. He climbed Cathedral Mountains. He saw silver clouds below. He saw everything as far as you can see. And they say that he got crazy once, and he tried to touch the sun, and he lost a friend but kept the memory. Now he walks in quiet solitude, the forests and the streams, seeking grace in every step he takes. His side is turned inside himself to try and understand Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado. Now his life is full of wonder, but his heart still knows some fear of the simple thing he cannot comprehend.
Can't believe that you got me in a suit and tie. I had to take a pull so I wouldn't cry. You got a line out the church door saying goodbye. Yeah, I believe them when they say you're in a better place. You had a wild side, but you had amazing grace. I know you're way off up in them clouds, but if you could still hear me right now, I hope you hit those ghost streets on two wheels. I hope your mansion in the sky's got a 10-acre field with some mud and some hubs you can lock in. Make some thunder, make them wonder how you got in. Hide your beer, hide your clear from a man upstairs. Crank it loud, hold it down till I get there. And when I do, I hope you got some new stories to tell. Till then, give heaven some hell. I bet you're looking for a crew like we had. Bunch of noise making boys that like to live fast. Burning rubber in a parking lot. Man, I don't know if the other side's ready or not, but I hope you hit those ghost streets on two wheels. I hope your mansion in the sky's got a 10-acre field with some mud and some hubs you can lock in. Make some thunder, make them wonder how you got in. Hide your beer, hide your clear from a man upstairs. Crank it loud, hold it down till I get there. And when I do, I hope you got some new stories to tell. Till then, give heaven some hell. I was there when you raised your hand, heads bowed, singing just as I am. Walking that aisle, praying that prayer. Man, it ain't right, but if you gotta be there, I hope you hit those ghost streets on two wheels. Hope your mansion in the sky's got a
You wrote a letter and you signed your name. I read every word of it page by page. You said that you'd be coming for me soon. Oh my God, I'll be ready for you. I wanna run on greener pastures. I wanna dance on higher hills. I wanna drink from sweeter waters in the misty morning chill. And my soul is getting restless for the place where I belong. I can't wait to join the angels and sing my heaven song. I hear your voice and I catch my breath. Well done, my child, enter in and rest. Tears of joy roll down my cheek. It's beautiful beyond my wildest dreams. I wanna run on greener pastures. I wanna dance on higher hills. I wanna drink from sweeter waters in the misty morning chill. And my soul is
We're going to take a few minutes just to hear from one another, but human bodies need to move. Would you all stand up just to stretch and enjoy yourself for a moment? It's kind of like getting up on a long flight. We don't have that far to go, but I just wanted you to give you a chance.
I'll take the other side.
Great.
Hi, baby.
Lindsay, seeing those photos with you and your dad, whew, that was great. So stretch your back a little bit and have a seat. If some of you want to share, Sherry and I will come to you, and if you'll just take a moment to share, if you'd like to do that, and then we have an incredibly powerful song that we're going to hear in a moment. Did you want to share? I'll hold it for you. I have a shaky hand too.
Okay.
Okay. All right. You go on up.
I'll get Alan's attention.
Yep.
And you don't have to stand if you don't want to.
I like people. Pardon me?
Oh, okay.
My mom taught me when I was little that
Sorry, you gotta treat it like
Okay.
an ice cream cone.
don't tempt me. My mom taught me when I was little, when you went to church, you had to take your hat off. But I'm going to talk to Tex here for a minute, so I'm putting on my hat. I'll take it off after. You can see why I had to have I have very shaky hands. Anyway, just a couple minutes, please. On Wednesday, April 8th, 2 days before Tex passed, I called him up about 4 in the afternoon, and I was driving home, and I sat out in front of my condo and talked to him for about 40 minutes, and he sounded really weak. And he said he had to get off the phone because the hospice nurse had come in. He says, "I'll call you later." And he didn't call me. So this is what I wrote that night and sent to him the next morning. "Darn it, Tex, you woke me up at 2:30 last night. I've been up ever since thinking about you. It was good talking yesterday, and I can tell you're really sick. Mary Lou, my lovely girlfriend who's here with me today, and I are planning to visit you next Sunday afternoon in Bend, since we're skiing in Bachelor's Saturday and Sunday morning. Since I was just lying in bed thinking about all the crazy stuff we did over the years, I decided to get up and write some of it down. When Eden Nicodemus told me I needed to hire you at Newburgh in 2010, the mill had one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. You came in and straightened out the TMP process and the OCC. Those are different pulp mills. He ran a couple of the pulp mills there. Stan McKinley's, who's here with us, came in and straightened out the maintenance. Sean Chase, who's here with us today, came in and straightened out the engineering, got it squared away. We were only running one of the two machines, the big number 6 machine, 1 week on and 1 week shut down. The other machine, number 5, was down for about a year. So we were just almost out of business. We only had the mill running 25%. We fought our way back to full production thanks to you being able to brighten the sheet. He came up with this fantastic technology. And having various technical wizardries, as Eric was talking about. He just came up with so many solutions. We promoted Troy Ellison and Grant, promoted you, and then Scott Conant came in, took over as he'd been there, took over as mill manager after we started SPFT, and I moved down, had to work down out of Georgia for a few years. We took number 6 machine from the lowest efficiency newsprint machine in North America to the best, in large part due to the good pulp that we got, because Tex straightened out the pulp mill there. Once we were SP, and that was 2012 when Newburgh went from being SP Newsprint to SP Fiber Tech. Alan Bird, the president of the company down there, the people that owned us said, you are getting no more money. And Alan took our receivables, all the money that we were owed, and it's called factoring. He got people to give us $11.7 million, and we gave it to Tex. And he helped convert the OCC plant, that's a recycled pulp mill, so we could convert number 5 machine to brown. By then, Scott Conan had left and Scott Wagner came in. You worked with Sean Chase, Frank Bach, Scott and I to pull a rabbit out of our hat, and we got that mill started up when everybody thought we were going to get shut down. Unfortunately, after we sold the mills to Westrock, a painful experience for those of you from the Newburgh mill, Westrock came in and made all sorts of promises about how it was going to be the flagship of the West Coast, and 3 months later shut it down. It was pretty painful. Tex helped me get a job working for Eric up there, so I went up there after about a year. You helped Eric and Rod develop a major market segment in paper and taught me some of the basics of estimating and planning jobs. We worked hard, but we played even harder. I remember working shutdowns with you in mills in Longview, Port Townsend, Lewiston. Incidentally, Eric, I need some royalties for that. I took that picture up at Port Townsend. And he and I went up to Lewiston, as well as a bunch of other what I call morphodite manufacturing facilities like roofing mills and where they build ships up at Vigor. I also remember the Friday barbecues up at PIC, Eric and Rod. On Friday afternoon, and I probably shouldn't say this, but sometimes Rod would walk around with a bottle of Apple Crown. We're sitting at the darn office, and Rod would say, it's time to have a barbecue and take the afternoon off, and Tex would be square in the middle of that cooking scene out there. Then I went up to Port Angeles, where the Rincon family were planning on spending $31 million to convert the mill to brown. My goodness, I could never convince them that the project would come in north of $100 million. I got Eric's foot in the door before I left, and you guys at PIC ended up doing the conversion with the McKinley team. You should give me a commission for that too, Eric. Caesar's here with us, Juan and Raj, some of the great guys up at McKinley that Tex worked with. Later, when I was consulting up at Ponderay, where I also got Eric a good job, Eric was up there helping me establish an equipment valuation for the mill. I was driving Eric from Spokane up to the Ponderay mill when the McKinley vice president called Eric and said that Tex and the crew had walked off the job up there until McKinley paid their bill. Crazy but true. Tex was just so wonderful about that. A year or so later, I was consulting up in Port Townsend doing continuous improvement when I volunteered to superintend the OCC plant, which was a mess after they demoted the superintendent. You came in and helped me straighten out that mess with Sean Chase. Sean was up there also, and Ted Saposnik, Mike Russell. In 2024, you were working down in Virginia in a valiant but ill-fated attempt to straighten out the Total Fiber Recovery Corp mill. Then Stan McKinley and I was down there for a couple months too. I worked with you for 3 months, 14 hours a day before they threw the towel in. We brought Stan McKinley in for the last month, but it was too little, too late. Tex, we had a heck of a run together. We've been through thick and thin together, and we sure had fun along the way. My alarm just went off, so I've got to get up and get with it. And I'm not going to read the rest of that to you. Anyway, thanks for letting me share with you. I really love Tex. Anyway, I know we all do. Thank you.
sit down. You don't have to stand. Do you want to say something? It's okay. Here. She can sit as well. Okay. Do you want me to hold this? Okay. Or do you want to put it like a
Okay. Thank you. I'm one of Tex's cousins. Actually, Carol Jean came first, and then later on, the other two came along. I wanted to thank everybody who's came here today to talk about and hear about this amazing man who's touched each and every one of us, and we're so grateful. Thank you so much.
I just want to say that Donna did a lot for him. He talked about you all the time. He talked about how your house was always open to him because he had family in Oregon, but you were the closest and you were the one that always invited him over, whether it was for Thanksgiving or whatever event it was. You were there, and he always knew that. And I know that he helped you fix things in your house too, which was Tex. In fact, that reminds me, when he was at my house in February, I had a door jammed, the door that kind of clicked a little bit as you open it and close it. And of course, he was there for a week. He fixed it. And so now every time I open my door, it just glides open, it glides shut, and the lock clicks, and it just unclicks so smoothly. And so every time I open my door, I think of him.
Hey, thanks for everybody for coming. My name is Bob Russell, and I will keep it short, I promise. I've known Tex for 30 years. It's been really fun coming here because I've learned a lot about Tex that I did not know in that 30 years. I've been to a lot of memorial services here in the last few years, as many of you probably have. And I would like to tell the family, with all our friends here from the industry, it's very rare that you see this many friends at a memorial service. But I've heard said that a man has a lot of really good friends when he is a really good friend. And that's why you see so many of us here from the industry today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, my name is John Hicks, and you know, there's just so many wonderful things have been said about Tex today. Tex and I worked together in the early days at the Vancouver Mill, and that man right there was probably the key reason that Boise got another 8 years out of Vancouver from 1988 to 1996. Tex was my boss for a good chunk of that, and we lived together in an office up above Stock Prep for years and years. And I just wanted to leave everybody with, you know, with two stories, a memory and then a story about Tex. Everybody who worked with Tex knew the passion that he had for his work. He was an engineer's engineer. Some of us went to school and studied hard, and we did okay. But Tex was a natural. He just had it in his blood. He lived for process. In January or February of 1989, there was a hard freeze on the Columbia. And that was before many mills put in good air drying systems. And when it freezes hard and you don't have air running your process that's dry, the mill freezes up. And I can remember Tex leading the charge in the pulp mill. Everybody's job was to take a torch and just warm up process control lines to get air moving so that you could keep the process going. Tex could have been a Marine landing on Iwo Jima. I'm not kidding. For hours and hours and for days, we did that to keep the mill going. That's just the kind of guy Tex was. You know, Tex was, Eric, he was always right, even when he was wrong. A little story about that. Tex told me once, he said, you know, in his early days designing for Serene in Vancouver, you know, one of his jobs was to design a pump base for a piece of process machinery. And anybody who knew Tex he was textbook meticulous, no pun intended, on his design. And nothing was going to fail, okay, on Tex's watch. And the millwrights cut the thing out, put the mounting hardware on it, and it might have been a little over-designed. And Tex tells the story that 3 or 4 millwrights were manhandling this pump base up the stairs from the machine room floor at Vancouver up to stock prep where it was going to be installed back in the screen from somewhere. And they were just beside themselves with comments like, who the heck designed this thing? And Tex was just coming down the stairs as these faithful millwrights were lugging his designed piece of machinery up the stairs. And he overheard this. And he told me, I didn't say a word. And all I can think of was the look on his face as he walked by those millwrights. Tex and I shared 3 loves in the world: process engineering, the trail, and the Lord Jesus Christ. And Tex, we're going to miss you. And run today, Tex, wherever you are. And just know that we will not forget you down here.
So that freezing up story reminded me of a time when one of the pictures of there was our cabin up at Zigzag. And we'd all go there usually around New Year's or what have you. One time, frozen solid, the water lines. Tex was there, and what does he do? Pulls out a couple of road flares, throws them under the cabin. We just stayed outside for a while, opened up.
Wow. Wow. The problem solving right there. Woo. Practically had a New Year's fireworks celebration there.
Thank you. What's that? Ice cream cone, okay. Hi, I'm Dave Cousins, and hey, Bob Russell, that was nice. And you're right. It's sad that we see each other at these events and not so much others sometimes, but I knew Tex for over 30 years, and everything that's been said today is 100-fold. You know, he's just a great guy. I always felt better after we talked, even if he was telling me something I didn't want to hear, right? He just had that way about him, that quiet way of listening and understanding, in any conversation about any topic, paper, industry, or otherwise. I always had a great admiration for how he would spend the time to support whatever he believed in, and Tappy is one of those things. You know, he would work to make people participate and donate. In fact, the last time I actually saw him was playing a foursome on the Lewis River golf course for a Tappy event. And you know, I said, hey, I don't know, Tex, I didn't sign up. You probably don't have any openings. He goes, yeah, I got an opening. Play with me. I'm like, okay. We had a great day. Has anyone here ever sang karaoke with Tex? Really? Oh, yeah, well, it might not have been really karaoke, but we had a meeting at Canita many years ago, and I don't remember just how it happened. There were people getting up and talking, and somehow he ended up with me on the stage and some other people singing American Pie. where if you ever listened to that song, it's a long song, and you don't actually sing it, you kind of yell it, right? So we would joke about that, but I'm sorry for your loss, Lindsay and Jamie. And he'll be missed greatly, but thought of every day for sure. Thanks for having us.
We'll take a couple more. Anyone else? Here we go, right here.
Okay, let's see if I can get through this. I'm Kylie. Tex was my stepfather for, Lindsay was just asking me about some dates last night, and I can't necessarily remember, but I think it was like 4 to 6 years. But what's hard is when I think of my childhood, it's with him, and it's with her. And every day, as I have 2 kids of my own, 2 girls just like us, who do a lot of the things that we used to do, I try to make my childhood look like how it was with them. And he was an excellent provider, and he was an excellent father, and he was an excellent stepfather, and I don't feel like I ever was treated differently. I felt very accepted, and I remember being mad that I wasn't a Rhodes like everybody else. I so badly wanted to be a Rhodes. And I'm sad that I didn't get to know him more as an adult. It's amazing to be here and to listen to how incredible he was, more than from what I remember. And he'll just always hold a special place in my heart, as well as Lindsay. And I think that's that.
My name is Corey McLean. I met Tex 26 years ago. We both worked in the machine and fab industry. It seemed like everywhere I went, Tex was there, almost like he was following me around to my customers. I couldn't prove it. So I ended up thinking I couldn't beat him, so I would just become his best friend. And I know he's got a lot of best friends in here, but he had that way about him to make you feel like you were his best friend. He's going to be greatly missed. I'd like to tell you guys more, but it's the stories go on. There's just so many, and I hope I get a chance to share some with Lindsay and Ryan someday. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Alan Weil, and I had the pleasure of growing up with Tex, and I say that. Entering college, when you're a freshman through graduating, you're growing up, let me tell you. And Tex and I were good buddies. There's some college buddies of mine here today, and we all have stories of Tex. And when I think back about all the stories, Tex was in the middle of almost everything. When we almost got in the newspaper many times, thankfully not too many, Tex was always out in front. When I say things like snowball fights or baseball bats out in the front yard, and you start thinking about all these stories that I remember growing up, Tex was in front, in the middle of all that. And because he had this giant gusto for life, if something was happening, he was there. And I heard mention of his truck. And a lot of our college buddies, we don't have cars when we go to college, and Tex had this 1950s primer gray truck that drove. It was amazing. And just to kind of keep it short, we were on a trip, Tex and I together, and we went up to Portland and for a social event, right, back in the 80s. And we're heading back home to Corvallis, and we're heading down Highway 99 together in Tex's truck. And if you ever saw his truck, it just screamed, "Pull me over." It was like a flag that said, "Put the lights on." And we're heading down 99, and sure enough, there's a sheriff right there on the line of the road, and whoop, off we go. And we get pulled over, and the sheriff says, Mr. Rhodes, I'm going to give you a safety check. And he brought out this big yellow card back then. And the safety violation check was about this big, and it was yellow, and he'd go down the list, and everything was no, didn't work. He'd go, put your headlights on. Nope. Give me a left turn signal, and Tex would do this. And the sheriff said, that's not a blinker. And he said, how about now? And he looked at the sheriff just like that, just chuckling with that little, you-know-what-eating grin on his face. It just didn't faze him. When I get pulled over, I'm just yes, sir, no, sir, straight as an arrow. But Tex, little hurdles like that in his way, he just thought that was part of life. And he kind of ate it up. Well, that sheriff went down the list, and everything was no, and he said, I'm going to go back and run your ID, and then you can be on your way. And Tex looked at me, and he said, okay, now the starter button's a little sticky down here, so you have to kind of tap that button to get the truck started. And for God's sakes, don't let go of the steering wheel, because it'll pull up. And I said, Tex, why are you telling me how to drive your truck? And he said, well, when that sheriff gets back running my ID, he's going to take me home with him. And I said, start over, I wasn't paying attention. I need to learn how to drive this truck home. Well, after a while, the sheriff came back and said, I don't know what's going on downtown. They're not getting back to me, so go on off your way. And thankfully, we went off our way, and he handed me this big yellow card, and he said, put it in the glove box. I popped it open, and sure enough, there were about 3 or 4 other big yellow cards in there. Just off we went. So I've got dozens of stories like that. I got the pleasure of growing up, as I say, with Tex, your father, Lindsay, for many years. We were best men on each other's wedding. And I got story after story after story, but they all end up like that. With that little you-know-what-eating grin on his face and that chuckle he had, because he just didn't, things like that didn't bother him. He just thought life was like a big ice cream cone and could eat up. So thanks, that's my little Tex story.
Very good. How about one more? Anybody else? Well, Lindsay, how about if you come tell us about the song we're going to experience?
Yeah, so I thought kind of a good way to end the service, and Alan will close us out, is I was going through his Facebook posts just to remember, and I noticed in multiple posts he mentioned the song Say, Won't by Mercy Me, and it's a song about not taking life for granted and cherishing every moment, and that's kind of how I want to kind of end this, is for us just to sit, take a deep breath, listen to the lyrics just as he did, and just be thankful for the breath in our lungs and the people around us, and not take life for granted. So.
Today, it all begins. I'm seeing my life for the very first time through a different lens. Yesterday, I didn't understand. Driving 35 with a rocket inside, didn't know what I had. While I've been waiting to live, my life's been waiting on me. I'm gonna run, no, I'm gonna fly. I'm gonna know what it means to live and not just be alive. The world's gonna hear, 'cause I'm gonna shout. And I will be dancing when circumstances drown the music out. Say I won't. Not enough is what I've been told.
hello. We're going to wrap up the service in 10 minutes. I'm going to start with just these last few comments with a clever question. And it'll be interesting in your own minds whether you have a clever answer. Why did you have children? Seemed like a good idea at the time. It was a lot of fun. And then I got a little spendy beyond that point. Guys, did you, you have your responsibilities at the house doing stuff inside and outside. Did you get to the point where you said, I am sick of doing this, let's have a little boy and make him do it? Or ladies, were you saying, geez, my responsibility is around here to keep things going. I am tired of this. Let's have a little girl, and then we'll make her do it. Is that why you had children? I was in a setting a few weeks ago, and I asked that question, and the lady said, yep, that's why we did it. Is that why you had children? Of course not. Why did you have children? You had children because you wanted to love them, and you wanted to be loved by them. And if you and I, as sinful human beings, and we've got plenty of evidence to prove that, if that was our motive, which it was, to love them and be loved by them, if you and I, as sinful human beings, have that noble of a reason, why do you think the Heavenly Father had you? Heavenly Father created you because He wants to love you, and He wants you to love Him back. The Father's affection, and let me just throw this other question out. Is there a kind-hearted Father behind all this? The Father has such deep affection for you. It's so strong that He was willing to offer up His own boy and said, you know what? I know what you're like, I really do. And yet, you're worth dying for. Here's a quote from a Bible verse. It said, God loved the world so much. God showed how much He loved us by sending His one and only Son. So you can come home. Another passage says Christ suffered for sin and didn't commit any. He never sinned, but He died for people that sin so we could come safely home to God. I love this quote by some of our team members that serve around the world. We give thanks to God, the holy and loving Creator. In His holiness, He demanded a sacrifice for sin. And in His love, He provided Himself as that sacrifice. I am that bad, and He is that good. There was a guy that lived in the 1800s, middle of the 1800s, named Charles Spurgeon, and here's what he said. He says, if someone speaks ill of you, do not become angry, for you are far worse than they know. Isn't that true? I love this quote. It says, this is tremendous relief in knowing that His love to me is based on every point of prior knowledge of the worst about me. You guys, how many of you graduated from Oregon State? Golly! Are there any ducks in here? Okay, we'll do your memorial in 10 minutes. You got all the... Give us your name and your number, and we'll sing a song, and we'll call it good. I went to Lewis and Clark College. 6 months before I was going to graduate, I was 21 years old. You know, at this age, 21 doesn't sound old, but when you're 21, it's old, right? I mean, I'm graduating from college, I'm 21, and I'm thinking, golly, what's life about, and what's this life about? So I went on a truth search for 6 months before I graduated. And here's my premise that I started with. I don't believe Jesus Christ ever lived. I think that's a myth. If He did exist, I don't think He's God. So I spent 6 months just studying And I found out that even people that hate Christ, and there's plenty of those, they go, well, historically, you can't deny that a man named Jesus, and by the way, Jesus is his name, Christ is his title. It's kind of like being governor, Governor Kotek. That's a person. Kotek, governor is a title. So I found out, okay, he actually lived. Then I studied 7 theories that have been proposed over the centuries, because everybody agrees you can't go to his grave, he's not there. Why isn't he there? 7 theories of people who say, well, he's not God, for goodness sake. And they have theories of why he didn't resurrect. So I'm a non-Christian. I'm 21 years old. I'm about to graduate. He lived. And I thought the most honest answer for the information was that he actually resurrected. So Jesus actually lived. Jesus resurrected. That means he's God. And I lived a filthy life. I was really good at what I did in my major. I was the top person. But my personal life was really dark and immoral. So Jesus lived, Jesus resurrected, he's God. And literally what went in my mind, I said, I'm toast, because I'm going to have to answer to him. So I went to a guy who just, and Tex, I think, was like that for so many of you. You just went to a guy and said, God, if I could live like that, that would be really cool. So I went to a guy named Ron Jensen, and for 90 minutes, a poor guy, I poured out all the filth in my life, and I said, this is my life. And at the end of the 90 minutes, I just said, gosh, I just wish I could become a new person. And I thought he'd go, you're a little late, Alan. Look at the scar tissue on people's lives all over the place because of you. Well, in that time, he gave me the opportunity to become a new person. And 9 days later, his wife led my girlfriend, Theta, to Christ, and then did our wedding, and we've been married 55 years. So here's the way we'll wrap this thing up. How do you respond to a God that would rather die than live without you? I know some of us are too proud to turn to Christ. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, if you're God and you're willing to become a human and get stripped naked, tortured, and put on a cross, that's a little bit of humility, and we're too proud? That's odd to me. Anyway, Tex. You'd honor Tex if you, let me throw this in before I make that comment, and then we're going to pray. As was said, Lindsay, when you read Dad's story, when you made your comments, and then Ryan, when you read her dad's story. Tex's life wasn't all tidy and smooth, was it? And there's no one in the room that has that category either. We're all pills. I said that to a guy one time, and he goes, yeah, but some of us are harder to swallow than others. So, it would really honor Tex if you would choose to use his departure, stepping from the land of the dying into the land of the living, because he really did know the Lord Jesus, to establish and experience an authentic relationship with a God that loved you enough, even as much as a pill as you are, to make you new so you could experience his affection now and his presence then. Let me pray for us. Father, why did you create us? To love us, and that we might love you through your Son. Father, thank you for creating Tex Rhodes. We're deeply grateful. And thank you for capturing his heart with the love of Christ and making him a new man. Father, winsomely and powerfully draw our hearts to you through your noble, courageous, selfless Son, the Lord Jesus, so we can be cleansed from all the darkness that is our portion, and experience a new and full life in this life and the next. Thank you for loving and wooing and winning our broken and rebellious hearts. Father, thank you for this man. You spread your goodness through this man, as Eric said, to countless people, to thousands. You lived well, powerfully, graciously, and selflessly through Tex Rhodes. We thank you for him in Jesus' name. Amen. In a moment, I'm going to have you stand. We'll have a benediction. There are refreshments back there for you. If you want to visit around the tables, obviously just tear one of those chairs off and put them around there. Out on the lobby near where you sign the guest book are memory cards. If you have a memory or a thought or a sentiment about Tex, you know the family will treasure these. So those are available to you out there. And then I'm going to have us stand in just a moment, and I'll give a word of benediction, and then I'll come down and dismiss the family, and then we'll have a general dismissal. Again, refreshments, memory table, memory cards. Tomato plants. Yes. Everybody gets to take a tomato plant. The bags are there, so you put the tomato plants in. And when you have a pungent tomato, think of your buddy. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, tomato plants. And if you kill it, we're coming after you. So please stand. Here's a quote from a man you know, Tolkien. Marvelous statement. Look at it up on the screen. The birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus means that one day everything sad will come untrue. Now may the amazing grace of the Master, Jesus the Christ, and the extravagant love of the Father and the intimate friendship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Amen.